Hi, everybody. It's me. Welcome to my channel. If you like my channel, please like and subscribe. There's a notifications bell up at the corner or down at the corner that'll let you know as to when I'm going live. So, I do have to say, today was a phenomenal day. It was a very, very good day. I was so excited. So, well, first, okay. So let's backtrack a little bit. I had vaccines a couple days before. And so yes, yesterday, it doesn't, you don't get the flu or pneumonia. You just feel kind of icky for like the next day until your immune system kicks up. So yesterday was pretty much, rest, rest, rest. Got up this morning and I was very privileged and honored to be asked to, hi, Jacqueline, to be asked to speak to some students at UW. And it was a very open, and like I told them then, I was like, ask me anything. You can ask me absolutely anything and I will answer it. And it opened that conversation up to where here it opened that conversation up to where they could ask very pointed and personal things about displacement and about the subculture within itself. And it was great. And I thought they really came up with some really well thought out and questions. And I think that it was a frank and open discussion, and I think that they learned a lot too. um, I am feeling better. Arm still hurts from the vaccines, but after my little breakdown, I went and got, of course, medical treatment and made it to my appointments and was able to, take a day off and then rock it today. So my makeup's all smeared and everything. Like it's been kind of a long day. But the cool thing was after that is that I got to see one of my friends who has just recently become a professor. And he is the like expert on vehicle residency. Um, and so it's really nice to touch base with people who are in the field and really do have a large knowledge base. And so, of course, I had to nerd out, ask lots of questions. But it's funny because I find that I can never learn enough. The more I learn, the more there is to learn. Um, I'll learn 5 different things, and then I got 20 things I need to learn about just to fall into those 5 different things. But that makes me happy. That's exciting to me. I find it fulfilling. Um, yes, I believe I gave an email address. The best way is to email me. Um, so yeah, it was really, really great. Got to learn about a bunch of different subjects and was invited to sit in on class for well, anytime I want, but there's some certain classes I wanna go sit in on. One of the previous heads of the coordinated entry system will be talking here shortly, and so I'd like to kind of sit on that and pose some questions if I have them. Thank you, Valerie. That is so sweet of you. I appreciate that. That's very cool. Um, so yeah, I got to nerd out, got to learn a lot more. And one thing that I wanted to bring up was that, thank you. I appreciate that, Valerie. It's nice to know that what I'm saying resonates. Um, and that and it's so worth me being here. It's so worth me being here and talking to you because I am the the more I learn, the more I can disseminate that knowledge. But where I was going is there's this one, oh, thank you, Anna. There is this thing we were talking about, and we were talking about how, like, when if you go back to even Hammurabi's code or whatever, I don't think I'm saying that right, but if you go back even in law and the beginnings of law, and when we started, deciding what our responsibilities were to ourselves and our society, because that's the foundation of when we started, having a societal basis. And so when that came in, I noticed that when we started talking about it, I was like, wait a second. Like, and I think that's why when you have like global followers, a lot of people don't understand that here somehow we have gotten away from feeling any kind of responsibility to others. So a lot of times you'll be posed with the question of, where's your family? And that's not necessarily, our family units are not cohesive as they were. And so, and there at this point, there's so much of a lack of social responsibility that those teenagers that watched the person drown did not go to jail. They filmed it and watched a person drown. I think they got ticketed for not calling emergency services. But I mean, that's one example. But when that starts to break down, and we see that, our families are not necessarily cohesive, there's starting to be a bigger gap in uh, whose needs are being met. It's a big deal. Um, Everybody needs to feel wanted in life and have a purpose to get out of bed too. That is true. That is true. And that's one thing that I am really thankful for, is that even even on the days where it hurts to go outside the house, I still have the ability to learn. And I think that that is such a privilege. It is. It is such a privilege to be able to have access to internet, or to have a laptop to do streaming, or to, do live vlogs. Those things are privileges. And so I take it as really an honor to be able to use the tools that are given to me and do work, what research, whatever that is, and make a difference that way, even if physically I'm not necessarily up to a whole lot of tasks. Um, and then if my mind's a little gone, I spin out and clean my house, and I've got stuff done. It's balancing those needs. And sometimes, like yesterday, it's just lay down and get better. I pulled my grandma. She, I was one of those kids that would just spike a fever out of nowhere. Just like all of a sudden I had like 102-degree fever when I was little. And she always did the thing you're probably not supposed to do, which is sweat the fever out. But man, I did it yesterday, and boy, did it work. 3 o'clock in the morning, I was like on it. Okay, I woke up, sweated it out, feel much better now. Thank God there are still people out there that care enough to get involved, even risking. Yes, see, and that's exactly it. And that's really what we have to concentrate on, is that there are so many people out there risking their lives to help others, doing the work that is necessary to keep people alive day to day. There's many people doing that work. And what we try to do is look at that and see, where does the discrepancy lie, okay, in the people that have the viewpoint of almost a morality based system, or like when poverty is equated to morality, we have a problem. And so I think I just lost actually my whole train of thought on there. Um, but my point was that we do need to concentrate on who is doing what. But part of that is we need to figure out how to get the ones that aren't on board. because it takes, we throw around the saying it takes a village a lot, but that's the truth. It really does. It takes these connections and these social structures around us to lift us up and help us achieve the best that we can in the community. And that's what makes a healthy community, a growing community, a happy community. Let's see. I'm going to address some comments now. Ginger. Okay. Maria, as long as we are not in a hospital bed, we are blessed to be able to do the little things of life as little as. Okay, I agree with that, but I also think that I know people that have severe depression that are not in a hospital bed, or if you have a fractured mind or any number of issues where maybe you have to look outside of just I'm alive, because maybe you're not grateful for that. Maybe you're not grateful for having to live a day full of fear and pain. And I think that's where it's important to address that and acknowledge that, but say, okay, if you can't feel that way that day, let's look at, be grateful for a flower. Be grateful for, find some point of beauty. Take your mind from the thoughts that are pervasive and focus on those and say, hey, I'm going to focus and put my focal point on this, and I'm going to be grateful for this, or I'm going to find beauty in this. Let's see. A troll. I see people in this town where I live holding up signs for money, and I feel so sorry for them. We addressed that a little bit today too, is the misconceptions when it comes to what do you do to help? Do you give money? Do you give food? Do you give supplies? Do you do nothing? Do you, and what I told them is, if you do not want to give money, don't. But don't tell anybody else not to. There are times that saved our encampment is the fact that somebody came by and didn't have that attitude. There were many times people were like, and it's funny because perception is such a thing. Everybody's got this vision in their mind of what, a homeless person is or an addict is or whatever. But guaranteed, if you haven't showered in a while and you're holding a sign, regardless of the vision, people will still be like, oh, they're on drugs. They're going to do this with it. The assumptions that are made about you because you ask for help, people somehow, instead of just saying, when you're asking for help, instead of just saying, no, I can't, and walking by and continuing on with their lives, they have to, well, they're not helping, but then they have to kind of almost justify to themselves in the world why they're not. And you don't have to justify yourself, but you don't have to hurt others in that as well, because that's where that comes into the poverty versus morality thing. Just because you're really poor, just because you need help, does not mean you are a person that has done something to deserve any kind of punishment. And I think that's kind of what we look at poverty as punishment, because yeah, it sucks. It's punishing. But it's not because somebody deserves the punishment. You don't, I could go on and on for hours, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to address some more comments. More people need to, poverty, let's see, where am I? Poverty seems to trigger the moral judgment versus ethical assessment, which we look back to what we owe each other. Exactly. And that's something that's really difficult, because, the information that we have access to a lot of times is shaped by our environment. And like I was talking with Graham today, I said, if somebody has the idea in their sphere and they know, which we both laugh because we know that, the majority of people do not. And that's, if you are in outreach and things like that, you are the outlier. We're not talking about you. I'm talking about the majority of people who are not involved in any kind of outreach. If you ask them, do you know 5 unhoused people. They probably don't. But if you knew 5 and 4, because of the sphere you were in, were criminals, you would say 4 out of 5 are criminals. But that's not the truth. The picture is much, much broader. And so we have to kind of come out of this personal experience and this sphere that we're all in and look at larger pictures. And that's why when when we look at evidence-based treatments, we look at data sets from across the globe as to what works. And a lot of the resistance we meet is because people's opinions and their thoughts about the data are shaped by their sphere. And their sphere, honestly, in a global scope, is very, very small. Let's see. Yes, people need to stop judging each other, absolutely. And that's very nice, Santa. Do you think, Jeff, do you think Maslow's hierarchy of need plays a role with depression? Yes. Do you think people trapped in homelessness are, on average, more depressed than those who have homes? Yes. Here's why. There's several reasons for this, but if you lose everything and you weren't depressed then, like say you didn't, that kind of life, that happening, that trauma can cause depression. And say you escape the mental trauma of it and you don't get depression, then we are finding that living in contaminated environments, such as people living under bridges, in industrial areas, exposure to urban toxicity, it actually shows in behavior before it shows physiologically or in physically. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. And also, more than likely the diet is much poorer. Access to health services is much poorer. So yeah, absolutely. When you're out there, you see an insane amount of anxiety, PTSD, depression. And I would say that right there, those 3 would probably be the majority of what people say mentally ill is. Now you have a smaller percentage that are like me, bipolar or borderline or schizophrenic or any number of the other ones. And those kind of are a more in-depth severe. Not that the others aren't severe. They can cause suicide. Depression is extremely severe. Don't get me wrong on that. Those tie into the whole. It does feel good to give with the heart. I reach out to all the homeless people in my area. That's very nice, Jacqueline. Thank you, Jules. Anybody can become homeless at any time in life. That's what. Well, yeah, exactly. That is something that none of us want to think it's going to happen to us. Nobody wants to imagine a life living under a bridge. Maybe as kids, if we were, strapping a little stick on and being like, I'm gonna go whatever. But nobody really dreams of being in poverty, of not being able to have your needs met, of being sick, of being completely wiped out and exhausted and tired, to being exposed, and it's you're exposed to the world in society in ways you don't want to be. The whole world will know what you look like, or at least your sphere will know what you look like with your hair a mess, no makeup on, and haven't showered in days. Nothing you can do about that. I mean, there just isn't enough shelter space, and the shelters that are available a lot of times, you gotta you gotta make choices where they are. And that comes back to as well, when people talk about choices, and this is like this myth we're fighting all the time. What about those who don't want help? And my whole thing is, okay, out of the very few, if are you walking up with keys in your hand? Because I would like to see that and see people turn down keys in hand. It's a theory. What are they refusing? A waiting list? Somewhere they don't feel safe? they're not refusing their need. They're not refusing housing. They're refusing a system that continually is letting them down. And you lose trust in that. What to do. Thank you. Let's see. How did you get yourself out of homelessness? Okay, I want to make a statement on this. I'm going to take a drink of coffee first, though. I did not get myself out of homelessness. Nope. And I think that that's a misconception that we all have. And I hear it all the time. And I've heard it throughout my life, is people thinking that they do things completely on their own. I have to say, if it hadn't have been for my neuro rehab team, my case managers, my psychiatrist, my therapist, and my social worker, I wouldn't have gotten into housing. Did I do all the things that I should have been doing? Yes. I went and got the medical care. But even though that's viewed as me lifting myself up and doing stuff, I did, but I couldn't have done it without those people reaching down to lift me up. And I think that that's really important to understand, is I didn't magically come upon a place. I first had to go through a bunch of medical treatment and, you know, be on a list forever. And just by luck, a place opened in Shelter Plus Care, and I've been able to use that to heal more and do more and get better and make a bigger impact. But I didn't do it on my own by any means. I had, one thing my social worker always told me, she's like, stay alive. Right now, your job is going to your medical appointments and staying alive. Because I'll be honest, I used to walk into her office and just bawl. Like, as soon as I loved her, I still love her. I have great respect for her. And I would hit her office and I would just cry. And, the whole, I'm smart, I'm intelligent. Why can't I do this? Why can't I do this? I need to be able to do this now. Yeah, I know I got to go to speech pathology. Yeah, I know I got to fix this executive functioning, but it needs to happen now. And she's like, slow the roll. There's nothing that you're going to do yourself that's going to make this move any faster. Nothing. You just need to get healthy, work on being healthy, and stay alive until we figure it out. And that's what I did. If that is what I would say got me out of homelessness, it was staying alive, keeping hope, and believing after, because that's the thing about being out there, is you're let down continually. You're completely, like, people promise things all the time. People say things and they're not there. And so you're consistently let down. You're told to go places and they're like, no, we just refer you. Oh, we don't do that. And finally you're just like, whatever. It's whatever. You get tired. Thank you, Jacqueline. Lotus. Oh, hi, Lotus Blossom. Is it true that shelters will not take a homeless person if they test positive for drug use? Okay. I don't know what area you're in, but not here. And I don't know any shelter that tests anybody for drug use. I do know that there are, like, we have a lot of low barrier shelters, which means that there is a lot of people who are in active addiction and have a lot of problems. The sickest of the sick, because they're the ones that literally cannot care for themselves in a tent or on the street. And so they will be in the shelters. And so it doesn't make sense for us to not shelter people who have substance abuse issues, because they tend to be the population that is actually the absolute most vulnerable. And that's because as we know, substance, depending on the substance and the addiction, it causes changes in behavior and functioning and health. So a lot of times you see people with open infections. If they did have mental illness, it is made much worse. So there's a lot of factors. Um, and I think it is a great idea that some towns are starting to build tiny homes that house people live in the streets. I uh, the tiny home thing, I'm still like, I roll it around in my head. Is it but I think tiny homes themselves are great, but I think we need to be really careful what we view as that, because most of the tiny home villages, we have to be very, very clear, are sheds. They do not have, like, we just got ones that have electricity and started getting other things in there. But a lot of times they are just sheds painted to look real pretty and house a bed. The issue that you have there is that these places tend to be put in areas. What I worry about is in some of them that they are being put into areas that could potentially make the people sicker. So we're we're having them stay there for longer periods of time rather than house them. We're putting them into these tiny homes, and sometimes the rate of those places are meant to be transitional, and people stay there for a long time, and that's just not acceptable, because a lot of times they're placed in areas like near railroad tracks, under bridges, places that people don't want to live, and there's a reason they don't, because that's a contaminated area. It's still better than sleeping in a tent with no electricity. Depends on who you are. I wouldn't have lived out. They had tiny home villages when I was out there. And we talked about this today too, choice. People have to be real careful when they talk about choice, because my choices when I was out there were going to a shelter. After visiting a couple shelters, absolutely freaking not. Sorry, no. I know for some people it's great and it works and it's wonderful. For some people, it was definitely not for me. And me, that's another thing too. I've had brain injuries. I'm impulsive. There's things going on. Um, okay, I don't know. Um, Sorry, that was somebody just whatever. Um, I think that we have to really be careful about what we think is better. Um, for some people, a tiny home village is better. It is better to be in a community with people and in that environment. For some people, it isn't great. Some people don't want to be around a bunch of people. That's why you get like lone tents out there, things like that. I was okay being in a tent until I found housing. Um, Maybe it's because I'm from Montana, and it's definitely urban camping, but it's not really like camping. But I just think that, well, yeah, but they don't have running water or heat. Like that's the thing, is that's why it's so important that people have housing, because that's what makes housing, is having running water, having, things like that. At at the tiny home villages, they don't have a bathroom. They have a bathroom outside, and then they have shower stations, and you know, I preferred my privacy. I had my campmates who I trusted, and that was a big deal when healing, especially with the issues that I have, was building and maintaining trust with others. Um, I was still in a place where I was very, very hyper aware of anyone around me. Even my tent, I made sure that it was up against two walls. So I knew I could hear rustling if anything came there. And that was a pantry where I had all the food in like one side where the grocery carts were. And that way, if anybody was to come in through, the only entrance that they were going to cut through was either the top or where I slept. And Rowan was right there. Like, you think of all these things and yeah, you're hyper aware, but it was my space. It may not have been four walls in the traditional sense, but it was definitely, It was definitely better than a lot of things but to each their own. Each person, number one, there isn't enough shelter space. So somebody's got to figure something out. There isn't enough shelter space. There isn't enough housing. There is, but we'll go into that later. There isn't enough shelter space. There isn't enough housing. So what do? Are you going to go in a tent encampment? Because I'll tell the people who are, like I was better able to take care of myself physically, even with all the issues I have, than a lot of people. I could at least hike up in. Um, and I'll be honest with you, being up in the woods where I was, because even that the bridge that we were under ran right through like a restoration forest over on this side. So we were in the woods. It was better for me. It provided the things that I needed for my quality of life, which was some peace and quiet to think, birds, and sometimes just lack of people. Um, thank God I was not raped living outside. Nope. Mm-mm. I think there would have been a better chance I'd have gone to a shelter or been on the street. That's a lot of sexual assaults happen in those environments. Um, I surrounded myself with people, like I said, that I trusted on a very deep level, that had shown that they were loyal and trustworthy on that sense. And I'm not a female that I've been raped before, and it wasn't because I was homeless. It's whatever. But yeah, there's definitely precautions that you take as a female. Absolutely. Or a male. Males get raped out there too. Yeah, things are crazy, but that's not, I'll be honest, that's not a homeless thing. There are predators that are housed all over the place. Like all over the place. There are people housed keeping kids in cages. Like, ugh. I really honestly, there are rapists, I'm not gonna say there's rapists everywhere, but rape is not endemic to the unhoused population. Um, we have a government that only cares about themselves and the rich people. It is definitely our government is not cool right now. Um, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to block, and I'm not altogether sure. I wish I could. I'm trying to figure it out here. Nope, it's not letting me right now. Lotus, I can understand your feeling. Just ignore it. It's just like it's like a troll, I think is, whatever. I can understand your feelings and viewpoint on tiny homes. Each person must decide for themselves what's best for them. Right, exactly. And the thing is like refusing help. I remember when I was on Hen, and Hen offers $800, but in this city, that's near impossible to, but they have very, very tight restrictions. In other words, it has to be a single dwelling. You have to have your own space. And then if you don't have your own space, then that money gets cut in half, and then you only have like 400. It's not a program that's helpful really at all. There's huge holes in the program. It's super unhelpful. But during that time, I was shown this room in this very sketch building by a very nice lady, but it was a sketch building totally. And you just get this feeling of I shouldn't even be here. And I'm just going to look at the place and I'm like, oh, no way. And the door opens and I'm like, it was just like some old carpet thrown in a room with a toilet. And I was like, absolutely not. Mm-mm. And she was shocked, blew her mind. She's like, yeah, but you live in a tent right now. And I said, I am not. I am not. You can't. Never in life will I value money over my safety and my stability again, ever. It was a rough life, and it would definitely shorten my life to be out there. However, when it came down to being safe and feeling safe, that was one of the most important things to me, was to feel secure in where I was. Hey Sylvan, how are you? So, are there any questions or anything? I just wanted to share my day with you all. Name 3 options should come up, block being one. Okay, thank you. Okay, Lotus present. Okay, guys, just follow with me 1 second. Lotus, thank you so much. Okay, I see it. I see it. I see it. Haha. Yes. Thank you, Lotus. That rocked. I appreciate that. I wasn't sure how to deal with it. I was like, I was seeing these just horrible things coming up, and I'm like, oh my, how do I deal with this? So thank you for that. Good. Um, so anybody, any questions or anything? I was so excited about today. It really was a good day. I'm exhausted. Um, a lot of a lot of things I need to think about and kind of go over, and but I feel I feel very honored to take part in shaping the students that are coming up and going to be really delving into healing and serving in this capacity. Yeah, it did. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. So that's all I had to say. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I'm going to spend time with my puppers because I was out all day. Um, that's it. So, in the descriptions, of course, it has ways to support as well. There's PayPal, Patreon. On the wish list, though, that's what I wanted to get to. On the wish list, this I tried having two, one for outreach and one for personal, and honestly, it's just too much at this point for me to do both. So I'm just putting them all at one. But what I'm doing is I'm notating on there what is for what, and so you can tell, and like there's like brushes, and that's like outreach, hygiene, things like that. So just pay attention to the notations. Um, let's see. Have a good night. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later. Have a great night.